eitthvað annað. Thank you.
Við kunnum ekkert annað.
Þú?
Hans náð smyr mína sál. Hans blóð þvær mína synd. Ég frjáls. Ég frjáls.
Mín skömm áðist á burt.
Oh yeah.
Mín þraut var við hans orð og ég frjáls. Ég frjáls. Ég á fyrir heitið og Guð minn, gröfin tóm. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn.
Hans náð smyr mína sál. Hans blóð þvær mína synd. Ég frjáls. Ég frjáls.
Mín skömm áðist á burt. Mín þraut var við hans orð og ég frjáls. Ég frjáls. Ég á fyrir heitið og Guð minn, gröfin tóm. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn.
Þegar tárin tók hann burt frá mér.
Ég dansa af gleði, Guð hér og gef hans mikið Everybody ready? Hann upprisinn. All them hands. Hann upprisinn. He has risen. Hann upprisinn. Hann upprisinn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn. Jesus lifir enn.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Well, welcome back, everybody. We hope that you had a nice break, some good coffee, some great conversations about our sustainable planet or how we can sustain our environment. Please make your way up to the front. There are a lot of empty seats over here.
Roll up, lots of seats here. Come get a seat down the front. Perfect.
So more people coming in.
I think we'll give you 2 minutes to come get your seats.
we're talking about our environment, we also talk a lot about water, and it's really important to stay hydrated, and it's really warm in here already. So please, if you have your water bottle with you, refill it with the suspenders we bought. These are they're this tall. They have a see-through clear water thingy on top, and you can refill your bottle there. Please don't use the ones installed in the venue downstairs. They are freshly installed ones over here, and I think downstairs as well. Please use those and not the ones already incorporated in the venue. Thank you.
So, I mean, it's slightly awkward because I was supposed to have to recap the most inspiring answers about what we're hopeful for the future, and number one is Peter's shirt, awkward. But second one is young people and youth, the YMCA and awareness. So, again, I think we've got a pretty good mission going forward now.
So, Peter, what's happening now?
Well, we're about to have a panel discussion with Emma Osmundson.
All right. So I'm really excited for all the people behind us right now. If you move to the side, you can see those lovely people. I'm really excited about what you are going to share with us, how you are going to encourage us and maybe inspire us even more, how we can act on sustaining our planet. Thank you that you're all here.
Thanks, Pia and Peter. And welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good comfort break and suitably refreshed. Well, we're going to have you working for the next 30 minutes because we have got a fantastic panel of speakers with us this afternoon. I'm going to shortly introduce them. But the panel are here to answer your questions. We want to provoke a conversation, and we want you to help us to shape that conversation. So we're going to kick off first. I'm going to just introduce you to who's on our panel. Some will be familiar, some less familiar. But we're going to start with Maria. Good afternoon, Maria. Maria's joining us from YMCA Norway, where she is a national youth representative. Amongst the many things that Maria is doing, she works part-time for her YMCA in Norway, as well as being a volunteer. And she, in particular, volunteers in the policy unit for climate change and gender justice. As well as her part-time work and her volunteering, you're a full-time student studying international relations at Oslo University. So let's give a warm welcome to Maria. Alongside Maria, we have Steffi, who's joining us from YMCA Berlin. Alongside Silke, Steffi is a member of the World YMCA Resource Group on Environment, and she's also a COP delegate since COP21. When she's not busy on her YMCA activities, she works within the environment program for the German Chamber of Commerce. So let's give Steffi a very warm welcome. To my left, I have Silke. For those of you that were around a little bit earlier, you would have heard Silke as our keynote presenter. She's joining us from YMCA Germany, and she'll be able to share a little bit more depth, some of her own experience in the field of sustainability. And then last but not least, we have Fredrik joining us from YMCA Norway. Fredrik is the director of Y Global, based in Norway. He is a full-time activist, and when he's not involved with YMCA activity, you often find him chained either to the parliament or blocking either some oil tankers on rail or sea. So it'll be interesting to get a little bit more information about that activist nature in a minute. So welcome, and let's warm welcome Fredrik as well. So it's our intention this afternoon, over the next 30 minutes, for us to try and curate a rich conversation and a rich Q&A session. To assist us, we have a roving mic, and we have some helpers on hand. So we are going to open the room up for any questions. So maybe if I give you a little chance to think of some questions, maybe I will kick things off and maybe let ourselves lubricate our thoughts on the sofas. What do you think? Would that be okay? Okay, well, what I'd like to kick off with is obviously Silke, Steffi, you're both involved with COP. So I'd like to hear from you a little bit about YMCA's involvement with COP.
So, yeah, this works. So, the COP is the climate conference that happens every year in November or December in a different country. The United Nations Climate Conference this year in December, there's going to be the 28th climate conference happening in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And the World YMCA is accredited as a youth observer organization to the UNFCCC, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that's why the YMCA can go to the climate conferences. Not every organization can go there, but you have to be accredited first, and then you can send a delegation. So the YMCA is doing that already for a while, for a few years,
since 2012.
Yeah, since then. And every year, nearly every year, sending a delegation, also sometimes to the preparatory conference that is happening in May or June in Bonn in Germany. That's a smaller version of the climate conference. And then the role of the observer delegates is there to observe, obviously, that they can go to the conference center where only accredited people can go. They can listen to the negotiations. They can speak to the negotiators in the breaks, on the corridors. They can also go to side events and learn there or engage in the side events as a speaker or ask questions. And they can also have meetings in the venue of the climate conference with their national delegations, like the politicians or the ministries, the national leaders, or engage in the youth umbrella organization Yango, that's for youth NGOs, and do their advocacy activism within the youth umbrella organization with other youth organizations together, so that it would be a bit more impactful. And then there are actions as well, and actions that are demonstrations that happen inside the conference center, like on a topic that is being stuck in the negotiations. Civil society can make an action, like powerful, like colorful, with chants and songs and speeches. And that's very fun because civic society can do that and be a bit more loud and give some color to the conversation and the negotiations.
Anything more to add, Steffi, to that?
No, not really. Not for now.
And I mean, so if we've got lots of young people here today. If they want to get involved with this specific sort of YMCA activity, how can they get involved?
So there's usually an open call published on the World YMCA website, so keep an eye out for that. You can apply for that. There's usually an official application process where you as a member can apply. We will then, together with the World Alliance, figure out who's going to join us at the delegation, and then due to the process, you will get selected, you will get a specific training for a couple of months. This is going to happen online, so we are usually connecting via Zoom, and we're going to prepare you as best as we can so that you're not going to COP fully unprepared, because it's, like Silke already mentioned in a bit, it's a bit confusing the first time you go. So we try to prepare you as best as possible for that.
Great, thanks. So keep your eyes peeled for the next call out, and real opportunities here for our young people. So great. So I'm going to put a call out if we've got any questions in the room yet. Are you still ruminating? Great, fantastic. We have a question just in the middle at the back. We've got our roving mic.
Yes, it works, yes. So I'm Robin from the Netherlands, by the way. I think it's quite interesting to go to COP, but what does it bring YMCA to be present at COP?
Great. So,
shall I go first? Okay, what does it bring for the YMCA to be at COP? Like, well, you could say, of course, it brings the YMCA visibility, it brings the YMCA access, but I think the more important thing is that for the youth that are there with the YMCA, for the youth that go there as delegates, it's an important experience, like a personal experience. It's a learning experience because you have to adapt the new context to this huge United Nations conference center, to the negotiation style. You have to cope with those negotiations. It's a space where everyone seems to be busy, and it's really easy to feel lost and overwhelmed, first of all, as well. I think for the individual and for the group that is going, it's a great learning experience, an experience also, or like a space also to grow as a person because you're exposed to new situations. It's also a networking opportunity. But also, like, once people go there well prepared to the conference, they know what the conference is about and they know what topic is negotiated. Then, of course, it's an advocacy opportunity as well, because we as the youth, we have a strong voice and we need to make it heard. Of course, youth will never have more scientific facts than the scientists themselves, but we as youth, we have a very intrinsic motivation to speak out on climate action, and that's why we are more convincing when we speak about it. And we have more power speaking about that than the older generation, I would say. So that's why it's important that the youth is there and present and speaking out, sometimes youth have speaking rights as well, or in the actions, like the mini demonstrations in the venue. And that's why it is important for the people, or for the youth, or the YMCA delegation to be at the climate conferences.
What I would shortly like to add is that, I mean, we both are members of the Global North, but what we try to make sure of is that at least half of the delegation that goes is from the Global South. So that is like the big implication of the World YMCA. We try to get voices to the conference that could usually not be there. And so we try to support the Global South to make their voices heard, and as they are already deeply troubled by climate change, deeply impacted by climate change, we want to make sure that their voices especially are heard. And we are representing such a huge movement with so many people that it's just necessary for us to be there.
Maybe I can add again, like, it would be a bit unrealistic to expect that our delegation of 10 people from the YMCA at the conference will make a huge difference. There are many people that are trying to make a huge difference. But of course, people go there, they learn, they experience, and they go back home. And then back home, they can explain to their peers why climate negotiations are so complicated, why climate policies are so complicated, and why action on the ground matters as well. Because while politics is stuck at the top level, because it's just so complicated to negotiate at the UN level, because nearly 200 countries need to find a consensus, and there are very contradicting interests. So while negotiations are stuck at the top level, we already need to act on the ground, and we already need to show our local, our regional, our national politicians that we really want change, and that we will also support the ambitious policies. And that's why it's important to go, but also to share once you're back home.
So to basically sum it up, we are, well, on the one hand advocating for the World YMCA, but on the other hand, we are translating what's happening on the international level to the local level.
And also as a YMCA, as we are a world movement and the World YMCA is accredited, we have the advantage that we are a really diverse group usually. Like, I think usually we have from most of the continents, we have delegates in the group, and that's an advantage that we have compared to other groups, because we can say we are a diverse group, we represent more voices and different perspectives than other groups, and I think that's the huge potential that the YMCA has, because we have so many local YMCAs all over the world, and we can spread the message, we can spread the insights to all over the world to our local YMCAs.
Great, well, it's a good thorough answer. Right, we've got another question at the back of the room. We'll need to shout a bit louder, I think.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Wait, there we go. Hi, my name's Maya. I'm from YMCA Ireland. I suppose my question looks at things in a more of, I suppose, a local aspect. I know the local to global kind of connection is quite important, but I suppose for a lot of YMCAs in kind of their own localities and stuff around. I'd have a question as to how can we support and what advice you'd give to YMCAs in terms of developing on this pillar in the strategic plan, what kind of actions, because like youth advocacy is a really important part and empowering and education, but I suppose like practical actions that YMCAs can take to kind of get that pillar and work towards that pillar.
Great, so we're looking at some actions. Maria, from your experience, can you share with us any actions that we can take away?
Some actions. As you mentioned, I myself am a volunteer at the policy unit of mostly gender justice, but also climate justice. So we do different advocacy projects to get climate questions up in the light. And we've done a lot of things. One of the things we've been working on is the school strike for climate. The YMCA was one of the main organizers, was probably last year. So I think it was, at most, we were about 40,000 young people demonstrating in front of the, what is it called? The parliament, correct, thank you. Other than that, we arrange panel discussions like this. We invite in guests from different NGOs and from politics to discuss questions that youth in particular are curious about. And I think it's very important for many youth to have the YMCA as a place where you can talk about climate questions, and it's very easy to watch the news and become very pessimistic as the news show us the reality, which is dark, and that we can work together and talk together and see that, okay, there is concrete things we can do, and for the YMCA to be, a space that opens up for these kind of conversations. I don't know if that was just a couple things, but
I suppose, actions often speak louder than words. So maybe Frederick, you are you're a kind of activist action man. Perhaps you can share with us some of your own insights in terms of how you are enacting your work in terms of really ensuring that we have climate justice on the sort of headlines.
All right. I think this is all about human rights and about justice, and it's about life, Climate change is killing us. So our brothers and sisters in Bangladesh, in Kenya, they're already losing their homes, they are losing their livelihood, they are losing their food security. So it's not a policy question for the future, it's a policy question right now. And how are we going to change these policies? So to me, activism is about political dialogue, We don't block the parliament or block a terminal because we want to stop the operation. We want to stop the policy that continue to increase the emissions. And last week, or the week before last week, Norway, the Norwegian Parliament, decided to increase our oil production, to launch new fields. This is exactly what the UN has said we should not do, and even the other institutions have said this is not going to help us. So that day we blocked the parliament for a few hours. We are very privileged in Norway because it's a liberal democracy, and the police, they are very gentle. They don't use any violence or any. So when we went up to the parliament and we said we are going to block the main gate, they sort of just backed away and said, okay, you're welcome. And we put our chains on the gate, and the political representatives came and said, where are we going to enter? And we told them that this parliament has 20 entries, so we are just blocking 3 of them, so you can find another entry to get into the parliament. So it's not really disruptive, but in front of us we had 20 national media cameras. And I've been doing activism for the last 35 years, and I've spent days in front of the parliament doing legal action without one media reporting on it. So we are not effective in our political dialogue anymore if we don't use civil disobedience. And that's a dilemma. But it's not a difficult dilemma. You know, Jesus turned the tables in the temple when the trade was not just, and he set an example. You know, those traders, they were allowed to trade by the authorities in the temple, but Jesus said, this is not all right. You know, you are exploiting the people by using the wrong exchange rates and using the wrong prices, and this is not right. So he turned the tables, and we should then turn the politics on, or turn the realities around oil, gas, fossil fuel. It's legitimate, and I think if we don't do it, we don't do our job. Our job is to stop the climate crisis, and using loving resistance, using civil disobedience in a loving way, not with any type of hate or hate speech or anything, but you know, when we engage with the police, they come and give us sunglasses if we need sunglasses. When we are in the oil bath, we create oil bath by just putting black watercolor in the oil bath, and then we pretend that we are drowning in oil in front of oil companies, oil terminals. They come and check the water. Is it too cold for you? So, you know, they are really taking care of us. And when we go to prison, they give us everything that we need. So I feel that in Norway, we are so lucky. We need to do this. This is the least we can do for those people who are dying from climate change.
Well, I've got two questions. I've got one just standing up, and then we've got a gentleman behind as well.
And hello, my name is Roberto. I come from Italy. And I think my question is related to what Fredrik just said. And but first I want to shortly explain why my question, because it may appear just a bit provocative. So we saw that the asset is young people, so people in general. So sometimes we as local realities, especially when we are far from great damages regarding environment, we have to explain young people and people in general and why and what, and not always experts are available. And so the question is very serious, and it concerns the communication and visibility. So what do you, this is the question, what do you as activists think about extreme actions, like for example, and Sophie is already smiling, I think, just stop oil, just to give an example. Thank you.
I can start. We don't do any extreme actions. We close all oil terminals and parliaments, and that's not extreme. You know, climate change is killing people. So closing the parliament for 3 hours, closing in an oil terminal. I used my sailing boat, you know, outside Bergen. There are huge oil terminals and there are security zones. So I just have to sail inside the security zone, and then they have to close down the whole loading of a big tanker, because they have a procedure that if somebody is inside the security zone, they have to close. So I did that for 2 days, and it took them 3 days to restart the loading. So 5 days. Just a little bit of sailing, you know, it's not extreme. So we don't do any violence, we don't do any hate speech, we don't do targeting of individuals, we just target policies, and we do it in a loving way. But I don't accept violence in this struggle.
And we've got a question just at the back as well.
Hi, I'm Graham from Y2Gether. I'm just interested, just following on, I think, from those questions, there's a lot of, in the UK, we have a big conversation at the moment around the change in laws that are clamping down on protests and activism, particularly as a result of activism around environmental issues. I think there's also a big conversation around the public opinion and sympathy for those issues when it disrupts their daily lives. And I wonder, also on top of that, the UK government is now building its first deep coal mine. They've given go-ahead for that. We hear the same thing in Norway with new oil fields. So my question is this: in the context of such extreme action being taken because people are trying to make a point, because things are sort of sometimes seem to be going in the wrong direction. What does effective activism look like, particularly for young people? Because I think we'd also acknowledge that not every young person would be in a position to be able to be arrested or to do something else. That school strikes have been effective to a point, but actually even there, maybe not as effective as they used to be. So what, in the panel's view, does effective activism look like for young people, particularly on this issue?
I think I try to give you a start of an answer, maybe someone will pick it up. I think good activism for youth, or activism that works well for all youth, is not possible. I think you have to decide for yourself how far you can go with your activism. For me personally, I live in a very, I live in the global north. I have the privilege of living in a democratic country. I can do things like go on a strike. I can block a street. I can block people from entering the parliament. Other youth in other countries cannot do that. So I think we cannot generalize what youth activism looks like. It's different depending on which country you're in, what your political system looks like, what you personally will be willing to do for that cause.
And also, being a white person in Germany, I have a different privilege than a person of color in Germany, probably. If we see the violence of police, people that are afraid of violence of police in Germany, it's understandable that not everyone wants to block a road because they would be afraid. There are other ways of activism, there's activism in social media, there's activism at climate conference, which is very different from sitting for hours on a street or sitting on bridges or something else. So I think there are very many different forms of activism for people, for youth, and also for people that are older. And as we all have different needs and different preferences, I think we should find our way to demonstrate, to do actions, to be active on the climate. And some people are more inclined to go on the streets and do the demonstrations. And some others might be more inclined to do the organizing behind, or to put the posters, to put the stickers. So there are many different roles. And also, for those people that are sitting on the road and blocking the street, there are some that are sitting there, but there are also others that do the social media around, that do the news, the press work behind, and also that are caretakers, that bring the food, that bring the water. So there are many different roles. And I think, of course, if you have a youth group and you want to make them being climate protesters, you also would need to cater for their safety and for their needs. But there are many different ways to engage. And I think as here in Germany or in other countries in Europe, we kind of have the chance to do climate activism and demonstrations and blockings. And in other countries, it's more difficult. So here we should use this chance that we have and support others. Because here in the Global North, we're responsible for this crisis, so we should also act on it. And that's why I think there are many different forms, and you choose the one that you like best and that you can act on best.
Can I just push the panel a little bit, though, just to push it?
We'll just get you a mic. We just got another return question.
Activism look like, though.
Okay, sorry, you said effective. Effective climate activism, I would say, is of course averting the climate crisis. So far we have not seen the most effective climate activism. Effective in some other terms would mean that you draw media attention, because then more people would know about it. So in terms, like many people know about the last generation activism in Germany, with the glue on the road, blocking the streets. It has been very controversial because some people think it's a good idea, a lot of people think it's not a good idea because it would take away the attention from the issue. But it's more like that how media works, because media doesn't really often go into the scientific basis of what they are advocating for, and their demands, they are not so out of the picture. They're normal climate action demands, but they draw media attention, and with that regard, they are somewhat successful, I would say.
Okay, I've got a question in the second row, and then I've got another question from the third row down.
Thank you. I'm Juan from YMCA Europe. And coming back to Vision 2030 and the pillar on sustainable planet, and asking your advice, basically. As an air organization, in terms of programs, which would be your advice as experts and with your feet on the ground of a realistic program that we can develop across Europe? It can have a pan-European approach that is really focused as we activate Vision 2030 in terms of an action that is sustainable in time, that we can do not only as a single expression, but as something that we can do in a permanent way, involving member movements, that will actually get to the grassroots of the movement and provoke change, which is what line of program would you recommend us to start thinking about as we activate Vision 2030? Thank you, and anyone. That's for anyone.
We can have more than one suggestion, don't worry.
Good question. Programs. My first thought, it's not really a program, but as I'm a national youth delegate, we spent a lot of the day discussing democracy and becoming involved in democratic processes, and YMCA is one democratic organization. But lots of the delegates downstairs don't really know how to affect the organization. So I think a good beginning would be to have like criteria that on general assemblies, for example, your delegation needs to be at least 50% under 30 years old in order to include all the young voices and the young concerns regarding our future and the climate crisis, which is knocking really hard on our door and is already inside the hallway. But I'm not sure which concrete programs to suggest. I don't know if you have any thoughts, maybe.
I think as a program, I'm thinking about education mainly, because the basis of every good activism is knowledge. So what I think our movement is very good at is sharing knowledge. And educating on climate change is something that we have been doing on a small basis, but we haven't reached across the entire movement. And I think that's where we could start, basically. So giving every YMCA the opportunity to learn about climate change, what does it do to your local YMCA on your local level, and what can you personally change as a local YMCA, but also at a national level. If you want to add, I think you wanted to go in the same direction.
Yeah, like in the Vision 2030, we have 3 strategic goals for the Sustainable Planet pillar, which is the internal one, making each and every YMCA climate neutral. And by already doing that, that's a learning opportunity for the YMCA members as well. Like the local YMCAs or every YMCA can have a brainstorming. How are we going to make our YMCA climate neutral? Do we install solar panels? Do we have biking policies? Do we have policies about sustainable catering or sustainable guidelines for events? And then while the group is designing the policies and the structures and the guidelines for the YMCA to become climate neutral, that's already a learning experience, and that's a group activity. Involve your members on how the YMCA can become climate neutral as fast as possible. Then there's the community pillar or community strategic goal with education that Stephanie already mentioned. And there's the advocacy goal, strategic goal that we already have with the UN level and the climate conferences, but you can also have it on national, on local, on regional level, or on community level. Go with your YMCA peers to your local major and tell him or her that you want climate policies, and you can train your local YMCA members on how do I approach a politician, what do I want to say, what do I have, how do I need to prepare. And that's also activities that the YMCA can do.
Okay, I know we've got a mic over there, but I know we'll have to take a question over here, and then we'll come back to you, sir, just over here on the back.
Hi, my name is Irina. I am from Ukraine, and I can surely say that youth in Ukraine, we're very interested, in sustainable planet. We're really interested in developing different programs that can help, and we can teach other people, kids, that we should take care about our planet. But if you follow the news, you know that a couple of weeks ago, Russian troops destroyed Kakhovska Dam. Due to this, the ecosystem was destroyed. Many animals died. Houses are just flooding. People don't have where to live anymore, and water is everywhere. And this is, I think, one of the most biggest, disaster. And the ecosystem is completely destroyed. So my question was, what could we do as the big YMCA family to help, to act in such situations? What could we do, maybe if we look at the perspective for the future, which programs could we do to, let people know that we have to take care of our planet? Because for sure, now we have, I think, serious problems, and not many people, and especially the government, don't really think about such things as, sustainable plans or ecological programs, because they have other things to think about. So what we, as a young people in the YMCA, could do, to help and to, just move and make our planet better. Thank you.
So I know we saw some films a bit earlier on where we could see that collaboration piece. I think when we saw YMCA Philippines working with an American YMCA. I mean, just asking the panel, do you think there's scope for us to collaborate and work together to work through some of these solutions? And have any of you had any experience?
We have partnerships with Kenya YWCA on climate action. We have it with Tanzania Youth Peacemakers. They have sent young people to COP meetings and engaging with the YMCA. I think collaboration and building the movement is essential, and to have that diversity where we can do everything from policy dialogue to civil disobedience to mass actions. There's a lot we can do that we still haven't done. So
a real potential role for our area alliances along with the World YMCA to look at how we can collaborate more closely, make those connections from national movements down to local YMCAs, even area alliances, to really, like we've done it with the war in Ukraine, how we've collaborated together to have impact.
Definitely.
I think, it's how can we create those spaces so that we can deliver some meaningful projects and partnerships. So certainly something that we can look at an aerial level. I know there was a question at the back, so thank you so much for being patient. I don't know if we can. Or maybe I was mistaken. We've got a question down here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Øyvind from Norway. Some of you spoke about the school strike and Fridays for Future, and up until the pandemic hit, right, it was really a building movement. And Silke, in your fantastic keynote, you said we need this 3.5% of the population to really be a strong movement. And then we come out of the pandemic, and it's a war in Europe. Prices rise, there's inflation. More and more people end up in poverty, even in the global north, right? And one of the questions I often ask myself without finding an answer, so then I ask you, is where do you see the opportunities and the possibilities to really rebuild and strengthen the global movement to stop climate change in this world with many different crises hitting us at the same time?
So I guess, you know, we're picking up on that tuna that Carlos picked up earlier. How do we ensure that we can mobilize and get a catalyst for that 3.5% at a time of, you know, uncertainty, turbulence, and the like?
So I think it's about prioritizing. Of course, the Vision 2030 has 4 pillars, and the Sustainable Planet pillar is only one of the 4. But I think there's space for 4 priorities in that case. And so to make it a priority, one of 4 priorities to have a sustainable planet, to save the climate, to save the environment, and also have communication aligned, but also like streamlining it in all the actions. So the World YMCA or YMCA Europe has given this Vision 2030, and it still needs to be translated to the national YMCAs. So that's still work that needs to be done, and then the local YMCAs also need to translate it to their programs. We know each and every YMCA is very specific. Some focus more on sports, some are more on teaching or like vocational training, or some others are more into the prayers. So each and every YMCA need to find their approach how to tackle it. And of course I also understand once there are seemingly more urgent issues like a war in your own country, it will be difficult to do climate advocacy because there are other problems that are more urgent, and then it's fully understandable if climate action is not your priority. But then other YMCAs can support and stand in solidarity and help where help is needed and where we can help out.
Frederick, I can see you're eager to respond.
I think we should have global campaigns to get the emission cuts up to 80% as soon as possible, and that we should increase climate financing. You know, Norway is so rich. We make hundreds of billions of dollars on oil every year, but we only give a tiny proportion of that, maybe 0.5% to climate adaptation, climate mitigation. So we should triple or maybe tenfold or 10 times the amount given in international development aid and earmark at least 50% of that to climate initiatives. From bigger initiatives by the governments in the Global South to civil society initiatives. I mean, the YMCA, we could use a lot of resources to create green jobs and to create climate adaptation initiatives. And these governments that makes billions on oil, like my own government, they can afford it, but there's not enough pressure on them to open their money boxes and put that money into youth-led initiatives. So I think we should have that campaign.
Mm-hmm. So there's that real opportunity, isn't there, between seeing climate change as an opportunity for new technology, new opportunities for young people, and entering clean industries. You know, we saw on the movie a bit earlier on in the Philippines how we're using new inventions to counter pollution, to counter the use of plastics and the like. So I guess there's you know, at a very local level, there's a lot that we could do, and there's a lot of hope in terms of trying to get behind new technologies, maybe making some personal decisions ourselves in terms of the consumer choices that we make, that really moves us away from feeling helpless to maybe on a very day-to-day basis being really proactive in how we can play our role. Steffi.
Just wanted to add, Silke already mentioned with Vision 2030 that we have the 4 pillars, but they are all interlinked. Like we already said, sustainability brings new jobs. It's also very important for our health. Greener, sustainable planet means better health. So I think we as a movement, we already have the pillars to build on, and we have to make sure that these pillars are not thought as separate 4 pillars, but that they are interlinked. And with that, I think we can build momentum to actually, get the change across.
Great. I've got a question at the back. I think it's Kerry. And then I have a final question, maybe a couple of questions down here on the left then. It's good, we're provoking lots of questions, which is really, really great. So,
Kerry from Scotland. It's been great hearing about lots of stuff around activism. We have a huge physical estate in terms of YMCA buildings, YMCA camps, YMCA facilities. And I guess this is maybe a question to you, Emma, as well. How do we decarbonise our buildings, our premises, our camps, so that we are actively making a contribution to becoming net zero?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And potentially an expensive one. Absolutely, you know, everything normally starts from home, doesn't it? And yes, as a global movement, we have extensive real estate, camps and the like, and most of those will be very energy inefficient. They may well be uncomfortable and becoming increasingly uncomfortable as the climate changes as well. So the challenge we've got is how do we invest in what we've got to retrofit them so that they are more energy efficient, or where that is not cost prohibitive, where we might have to be brave and rationalise the estate that we've got. So I think there is a real need for us to maybe look at this collaboratively as well as individually, to look at, well, what do we need in terms of our real estate to best serve our movement? And those assets being exemplar, because if we kind of practice what we preach in terms of our faith, then we need to be good stewards and do as much as we possibly can. But I think there's a lot we can do in terms of sharing our knowledge, sharing best practice and experience. And again, could be a really critical role for area alliances, where we can be the conduit for gathering best practice, in disseminating information and the like, and also giving the encouragement for people to be brave, to maybe be the early pioneers, to look at ways in which they can reduce carbon within their estates and the like. So we've got lots of hands coming up now. Gerhard, we've got a lady down here, and then the gentleman behind, and then we have somebody over here as well. If you just keep your hands up, if you can bear that, and maybe if we'll be a little bit shorter and sharper now, so we can cram in as many questions before we finish. Thank you.
Short and sharp. I'm not really good at that, but I'll try. Monica from the Y Guides and Scouts of Norway. I'm a staff member of that organization, and one of my daily life problems is that we have all of these beautiful big plans, big visions, and I have to translate it for small kids. And it's very difficult to only dream big with kids when they maybe don't even understand the phrase sustainable planet. So what I would love for me to be able to help the national level to actually do some important work locally is some help from YMCA Europe to make some easy activity packs. Some easy activities that make kids understand why this is important, why we have to start small to dream big. And I would love to see an activity pack for all of the 4 pillars. Thank you.
Great suggestion. It is noted, Juan. The gentleman to the left. Do keep your hands up so we won't miss you.
Hi, all. My name is Nuno from Portugal. I just want to say something that is really important. So, there is some things that are already doing. The SDGs have a lot of manuals already that are completely suitable that we can copy, we can use for children. It's quite good. This is one, and there is a lot of material because everyone is thinking about it. So YMCA can develop and adapt because they are really good. The second thing is about infrastructure. So I have been evaluating thousands of projects from the Commission and funds like La Caixa Santander, working on these areas because of this inflated in the market problems new about family poverty and energy poverty are really a mess, and is going to be in the next years and could be a challenge also for the YMCA. Cutting down, the third point is cutting down the buildings. Sometimes it's not that difficult. There are a lot of funds now that can be like ESCOs, they invest for renewable energies, okay? So people don't put all the money. This is compatible in all countries, so YMCA could open this kind of doors and see what kind of funds there are so that YMCAs local can receive these funds to convert their infrastructures to renewable energies. One thing that is completely clear and is a response for many people thinking is about cost. Sometimes we can buy green energy in the market, just ask the suppliers. It is 0.5% of your footprint, 0.5%. If you become a supplier with green energy, letting it out the full, it's quite the same price, and you cut 50% of your footprint. So in every country, there's these opportunities. There are suppliers, and YMCA could also help each country to find good suppliers and to find these funds to convert the infrastructures. It's not quite a mess. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Some really useful information there. So again, something that YMCA Europe can help collate and distribute to people, and maybe look at those social investment opportunities so that we can all retrofit or improve our real estate together. Right, I've got a couple of hands up here. We've probably, if we just take these as our last two questions, and that would be great.
One question and a wish for everyone. How many came here by train? In Sweden, we have this environmental policy that makes us travel by train, only eat vegetarian, and we do fundraise a bit for our venues and places so that we can work more sustainable. I would like YMCA Europe to make it easier to come here by train, because when we arrived late in the evening, couldn't come here. It is very tricky. I'm happy I did it on train, but it's tricky, and it would be very nice if in the future we could work on seeing, okay, is it possible for people from Europe to take the train to the next gathering?
Great, really good observation. We'll certainly put that in action when we head towards Athens. But no, I think definitely, and certainly you would have noticed that this is the first General Assembly where we've adopted a fully vegetarian diet for everyone. And these are the building blocks of going towards creating more sustainable events. In the same way, certainly since the COVID-19 pandemic, we increasingly are being more hybrid in our approach to meetings, and indeed our next General Assembly meeting is likely to be hybrid, so that it will be not in person, but also by digital. So thank you. And our last question, sir.
Yeah, hey all, Max from YMCA Belarus. I want to ask a small follow-up question to something Silke mentioned earlier, just to get the opinion of some people that are a bit more in-depth in the topic. You mentioned in Germany right now there's this group called Last Generation that are still sticking to, well, not that intrusive, but civil disobedient measures. And I mean, often people say a negative promotion is promotion as well. And I believe because of their actions, they are very much one of the reasons why in Germany people talk about that. you as experts on that field, what is your personal opinion, maybe in a couple of words, about groups like that with negative promotion that will still lead to growth in the discussion?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think in our society in Germany, we have a lot of people that are pro-climate action, but we also have a lot of people that are against climate action because they would lose their money because of that, they would have disadvantage because of that, or simply because they would have to change their lifestyle because of that. So I think those people that are against last generation and that are also against climate action are really vocal and they are loud. And that's why media is also flooded by that opinion of people that are against climate, against last generation and their actions. But there's also a really big quiet mass that doesn't really have an opinion on that or doesn't really notice us because they're far from Berlin or they're far from the bigger cities, or that have an opinion but they just don't speak out. And those people that speak out for the last generation and their actions, they are the common climate organizations. So people would think anyway, of course, they would say last generation is doing good because they are a climate or an environmental organization. So I think if you would ask the quiet mass, then the picture would look already different. And earlier we spoke about what is effective or effective climate activism. Then I would say that last generation is somewhat more effective than other groups because they have reached media attention and people are discussing about it. And that's of course not ideal because people are not discussing, or it has not reached that we have stronger policies on climate action, but also action on the street is supporting kind of politicians because then politicians can more say to their to the other politicians that are not in favor of climate action that you see the action on the street, so we really need to act. So criticizing the government is also kind of supporting the government to put more ambitious policies.
I think the movement itself is effective in channeling the discussion to climate action, to climate policies. What would make it more effective would be to lead to the discussion talking about the fears of many in our population, like what does climate change, what does climate action include for me? How many, what costs are going to do I have to deal with? How do I deal with all of that? That's something that we as a society have to answer, not just politics, but also us as a society. I think the movement, like Last Generation, for example, was a good starting point because we are already discussing it, but there has to be more discussion about how do we actually change now and what is involved in that change.
Great. Well, thank you so much for some really fabulous questions and interaction with our panelists. So thank you to you first and foremost. Can I also thank Frederic, Steffi, Marie and Silke for joining us this afternoon. And let's give everyone a round of applause.
Thank you for being here and for answering all those questions. And what helps me to process things that I heard is when I get up and I do some stretching. So we're gonna do some stretching together. It's a little bit like Peter says, but you just do what I say without me saying Peter says all the time. So please stand up, everybody. And we start by stretching our hands all up towards the ceiling. We try to reach even higher and higher. Yeah, that looks good. And we try to reach a little bit higher. Get on our tippy toes. Try to reach even more higher. Yeah, looks good. And then we draw a circle, maybe not by hitting your neighbor. Good. And one more time, up front, and inhale and exhale by dropping your arms down. And we're gonna do some arms over here. Great. And crossing the other arm. One more time. So And we do some circular movements with our wrists. That looks good. Think about the things that you heard today. Those are the hands that are putting things into action. Great. And we do one circular movement with our head. Get all the thoughts that are like going around in circuits in our head straight into order. And then maybe stand on one foot. Last one. Great. Like a tree that we're going to plant. And the other leg. Great job, everybody. I think we're now back in the mood. Thank you all.
Right. Grab a seat. So I see a little sign over here, and it says Climate Action Declaration. Pia, what is this?
To be honest, I'm not really sure about, but I know somebody who knows quite well what is this about and what's the background of this. So Emma, can you please come back on stage and tell us a little bit more about this Climate Action Declaration, please?
Okay, thank you, Pia and Peter. Yes, so over the course of the next couple of days... I'm just waiting. Oh, thank you, gentlemen. So over the course of the next 2 days, we will be posting this board in the foyer area just out behind these seats. And this is a climate action declaration. It's a draft declaration that's been prepared by the Executive Committee of YMCA Europe. And I guess in many respects, we want to test the water. So we're going to invite you to come and read the declaration and sign up if you feel that this is something that you're comfortable with. And if we have got a growing support for it, then it's something that we'd like to bring to a future General Assembly to perhaps adopt this Climate Action Declaration as an area alliance. So what we'd like you to do, if you are in support of the declaration, is sign it and put which YMCA you've come from today or you're part of in Europe. So there it is. The declaration is very much aligned to the ethos within the 2030 World Vision, in particular for the Sustainable Planet pillar. So hopefully it will be largely familiar to you. And I hope you support it. But we're going to leave it in the foyer, and we're going to just allow you the time over the next 2 days for it to distill and filter through. And by all means, if you want to feedback on it, you can scribble your comments as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, well, I think that's the end of our session today, guys. So the next thing which is on our horizon is dinner at 6 o'clock to 7:30.
And if you haven't signed up for the City Treks tomorrow, please make sure to go on the link tree, select the City Treks, scroll through them, and then join the WhatsApp group of the City Trek you want to be part of. After the dinner, we're going to kick off the night with our evening program in the other hall at 8 p.m. So we're excited to see you there. But before we go, let's hear one last song. Okay, we might not hear a song of our band.
From our wonderful band.
But maybe we're just going to wrap it up and we see you at dinner.
See you at dinner.
The first day that I met you, never dreamed that I ever could forget you, but black and white make a mess when it turned to gray.